Hello and welcome to Focus Friday. Focus Friday is our weekly vlog dedicated to starting the conversations around coaching and educational spaces. And this week we are going to talk about peer accountability and the steps that we can take to help have peer accountability, whether we're coaches or we're teachers in the classroom. One of the best motivators and tools that we can have is actually having peer accountability, having our students or our athletes hold each other accountable. The problem is most athletes and students have never been taught that skill, have never even really thought about how to effectively have peer accountability. They think of it a lot as, just yelling or motivating each other, but they don't think about the actual framework. So we want to talk about how we institute that framework a little bit and some of the steps that we do. Again, these are just some of my general steps and ideas. You may have your own ideas. I'd love to hear them and share them in the comments, and we can continue that conversation. First is setting clear goals and expectations, right? It's really hard to have accountability, whether it's peer accountability or any accountability, if we don't know what we're actually aiming for, if we don't know what we're all working towards. So we have to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And again, this doesn't mean that we need to agree on everything, but everyone kind of needs to know where we're going, what our direction is, the purpose of what we're doing. And a lot of times we just assume that that is built in, whether it's history class. Okay, we know we're going to learn about history, or it's a basketball team. We're going to come in here and try and win basketball games. Those are real simple, easy plans, but it needs to go deeper than that. How are we going to get there? What's going to be the process? What are the expectations of the group or the individuals in the group? And we need to make sure that that is defined and outlined in our class or on our teams. Second, and this is a big one, and I think this is where a lot of groups fall, is we need to establish regular check-ins. A lot of times we just say, okay, we're going to hold each other accountable, and then we just kind of let it go and then hope that it happens. If there's any big issues, they'll be caught. But we need to schedule and have regular check-ins. It's just an essential part of having peer accountability. They not only provide a chance for us to look and see where the progress is at, but also gives those involved in the program a chance to speak up and talk about what's going on or things that may need to be addressed instead of waiting until they become a problem. So we need to make sure that we schedule regular check-ins and we hold everyone accountable to getting to those check-ins. It should not be an optional type situation. Next is we need to have everyone have honest and open communication. That can be really hard. If you haven't taken the time to work on trust and developing that trust, it can be hard to have that honest and open communications. But we need to make sure that when we have these check-ins and we're holding each other accountable, that nothing is left unsaid, that we don't just agree to things and then we walk away and we start talking behind each other's backs, or we felt like, oh, I should have stepped up and said more. We need to make sure that everything's on the table, everything has been laid out, and we are good to go after that point. And that communication is what's going to help identify the issues and the challenges that may arise and how we can address them, but it will also help strengthen the trust and build trust on that team. So creating that, open and honest communication is really, really key. And we have to make sure that it's not personal attacks. We've talked before on this vlog and some other vlogs about, how to deal with conflict resolution and the conflict continuum and all that. So check for some of those other videos if you're curious about how we address and work on the conflict aspect that often comes with open and honest communication. Another step that we have to do is we have to actually create a supportive environment. A lot of times coaches, educators, leaders, administrations will say, that we want this open and honest communication, but then we don't actually create that environment where the other stakeholders, the players, the students come in and they feel like they can actually have that discussion, because maybe our body language is saying something different from what we're vocalizing, or maybe the atmosphere is intimidating. everyone's standing around and a player feels like they can't be open and honest because there might be some retaliation. So we have to make sure that we create that environment where those students and players and team members can come in and actually have support to have those open and honest communications during those check-ins. And we also need to make sure that it's not just about, hey, are we doing what we need to, or addressing problems. Those are great moments to actually celebrate successes and maybe little things that were done. Someone has improved a little bit. It may not seem like a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but it could be something big for them, and that could be a great motivator. So creating that environment where it's not just about peer accountability in the negative sense or stopping bad things, it's also peer accountability where we're celebrating the successes, even the small ones, of our teammates. Hold each other accountable. And obviously, in peer accountability, holding each other accountable is probably the biggest step that we have. But how do we actually do this? And that is really just making sure that everyone is following through on the commitments and we're taking the necessary actions to achieve the goals that we originally set. And remember, we started with that one as the big one, because if we don't even know what our actual goals are, how can we have peer accountability? How can we hold people to that commitment if we don't know what they're actually committing to? And this is where we also, if someone's not meeting their goals or their expectations, we talk about it. And one of the big things that we run into is we tend to see peer accountability is done fairly easily when it's an action or a physical sense. Someone's not doing a skill correctly, someone's not saying something correctly, someone's not running the right play. But we have a harder time having peer accountability when we talk about behavioral issues. Someone's talking over the coach or the teacher, someone's coming in late, someone's not putting in a lot of effort. We tend to let them go because it's a little bit uncomfortable to talk about that. And then they become action problems where we could have nipped it in the bud. And just by human nature, we tend to avoid those behavioral moments when we want to have peer accountability. And those are the ones that we absolutely have to attack. And we go into how we do that, in other videos. The Question Before the Question is a great book to read, sort of on that. And when we're holding someone accountable, it's not always, hey, why aren't you doing this? We need to ask it and replace it more of, hey, how can I help you achieve that? What can I do to help you get out of this rut? What can I do to help you get to class faster and not be late? So we need to look at how we hold each other accountable and also how we phrase it and have those communications. And that's really how we have peer accountability. It's those steps. And a lot of times we'll see it where one of these steps is missing, and that's where the breakdown happens. So again, to kind of sum it all up, first, we have to make sure that we have clear goals and expectations. We want to make sure that we establish regular check-ins. We want to encourage honest and open communication. We want to have a supportive environment. And then lastly, we want to hold each other accountable and actually have those discussions no matter how comfortable they are, because in the long run, it's going to help our program out. Peer accountability can be really tough if you're a coach and you're trying to get your team to have that peer accountability. Same in the classroom, but it can be done. But again, go through each one of these steps. Don't just assume that everyone understands what the goals are or everyone knows that communication should be open and honest. Go through each of these steps with your team or your group to help you form that peer accountability. And the great thing about peer accountability is we see better results when we have peer accountability. When a teammate is telling a teammate and holding a teammate accountable has a longer lasting and a stronger effect than if the coach is doing it, because it's always expected for the coach to do it. And same in the classroom. You can, as a teacher, say the same lesson over and over again. But if a peer holds them accountable, there tends to be a stronger response and a more lasting response to that peer accountability. Now, again, I'm not going to pretend that it's going to be all roses. There are times when it can be tough because if it's not presented correctly peer to peer, sometimes it feels like a personal attack. So you're going to have to monitor and work on those players, those students, those athletes, whoever you're working with, to make sure that they're handling that communication, that conflict correctly. And remember, not all conflict is bad. We can have passionate debates and disagree about things as long as it's not fake harmony or on the other extreme, personal attacks. So again, work on your peer-to-peer accountability, and I think you'll see better results on the field, on the court, or in the classroom. Thank you again for watching this week's Focus Friday. As always, you can reach me directly across all social media at RealDanMickle. And you can also check out Soul Performance Academy, our sponsor for these vlogs, at soulperformanceacademy.com. Please subscribe, like, share this video, and let's have some discussion in the comments. How do you foster peer accountability in your team or in your classroom? And what are some of the struggles that you've had with peer accountability when working with your group? I would love to talk about this and open it up to the community. So peace, much love, don't suck, and remember, one day one. It's either day one or it's one day. It's your choice on how you handle it. See y'all next week for the next Focus Friday.